All right. Hello. Hi. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. So, welcome, everyone, to a very special edition of the Binalot Talk because it's the School of Archaeology's anniversary week. Good. Yes, so it is, this year, we're celebrating our 28th anniversary as a program, and the first as the School of Archaeology. So it's a very big milestone, and we're very excited to be celebrating with you all today. And we have a very special talk as we sort of look back at the past of formerly the ASP, the Archaeological Studies Program, now the School of Archaeology. But before I begin, let me just introduce myself. My name is Arturo, or JJ, the usual moderator for the Binalot Talk series, which is a series held by the School of Archaeology where we invite speakers from various different backgrounds, various different professions. Oh, can we move forward just slightly, please, and thank you. So we could accommodate more people today. Okay, great. Thank you, thank you. All right. Yes, but like I was saying, the Binalot Talks is a series of talks by the School of Archaeology where I invite speakers from various different backgrounds to talk about their research interests, their current research, anything under the sun. And today we have, again, very special guests. One of our very lovely faculty members, Dr. Victor Paz, who was formerly a dean. So he has a lot to say about the 28 years of the School of Archaeology. But before we begin, again, since it's the anniversary week, let me just make a couple of announcements of various activities that we have planned throughout the week. So yesterday, some of you were at the archery session. Today, later at 2, in this same room, we'll have a movie screening, which I believe was it Dora and the Lost City? It wasn't Barbie. We guarantee you it's at least somewhat themed to archaeology. So we'll have a fun movie night. Tomorrow, we have board games at 3, 4. Board games at? Board games 1 onwards. Please join us. And then on Friday, we have a game of Pinoy. That starts at 4. And then the dinner, which would start at 6, I believe. Secret. You have to attend to figure that out. But yeah, besides that, I think we can start. So he needs no introduction, former director of the Archaeological Studies Program and a very important member of our community, Dr. Victor Paz.
Thank you, Arturo. It's okay, Agalata. This works, huh? This works, okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming, but let me just add to the announcements for the week-long celebration. On Friday, the dinner is a Thanksgiving dinner for everyone. So we have invited everyone that helped archaeology from the beginning. Excuse me. And then we have antiquity to be donated to the library. One is proudly has an article by an alumni of the program, ISA Campos, Dr. Campos, who wrote something. Too bad Ruben is not here, but who wrote something on that wonderful discovery of a musical instrument in Vietnam. So it's in the antiquity. And it's chock full of articles. Again, it is in the library, so we're updated with our antiquity for the year. So, before and beyond 28 years, a very succinct history of archaeology. However, there you go. All right. What I'd like to do in a very short period of time is address 2 major points I want to share with many people here who are much younger. First is to situate the history of archaeology in its praxis in the university. So it's almost very much a navel-gazing kind of talk. But to avoid being too navel-gazing, we shall put it in a larger context of the practice of archaeology in the Philippines, which for those who do listen to some of my older talks, I've been trying to understand a history of archaeology in its praxis in the Philippines through a periodization that goes like this, dictated by a internal logic where we are trying to track down the transforming praxis of the discipline, the theory and practice, plus the transforming value giving to material culture, be it archaeological or ethnographic. It is not a straightforward thing. There are many variables that we follow to dictate the shift from one period to another, all 8 of them. I will not go into any more detail except to say that talk today covers a big chunk of it. In other words, the history of archaeology in the Philippines, for better or for worse, the university has a big role in it, for better or for worse, as I will explain. So before, what many people don't understand or know perhaps is that when Alti Bayer came to the university and joined the Department of Anthropology, it was not just the Department of Anthropology. It was part of the Department of History and of Sociology, with history being first formed in 1910, and then only to be split in 1952 from sociology, and then finally becoming a Department of Anthropology as we know now. This is important because no matter how hard we look, no matter how we go into the literature, deep into the literature, the Spanish colonial community, government, academic tradition did not introduce archaeology in the Philippines. It was Americans. So our archaeology came to us through anthropology, for better, for worse. Bayer lost his job because of reorganization in the Bureau of Science. And lucky for him, he had many good friends, including Rafael Palma, who was a Board of Regents and later president. And Palma made sure that, that Bayer enters university and told his friend, look, why don't you start an anthropology program within history? And that's what he did. He was a young man, remember. And he created 2 courses in a span of 2 years. All courses were for the undergraduates, early history and development of Philippine peoples, more ethnographic. The second one, 1916 and 1919, was Philippine archaeology. Straightforward already, an attempt to survey what they knew, very little about archaeology. This is crucial because 1919 was a year where many things came out in the literature that really picked the emotions of Alti Bayer in his intellectual mind. But this is also interesting because to save, or at least to give Bayer more responsibility, he was given responsibility in the Philippine Museum. And now he was teaching at UP. So what the catalog at that time was saying, look, join our program. You have advantages, free access to the Philippine Museum, to Ateneo de Manila, to UST, and literature in the Bureau of Science. It was a come-on for students to join the program, an aggressive enticement for more recruits. And at the center of it all was Alti Bayer, of course. Now, for those who are old enough, Mandy will remember Solheim. No, Mandy was not alive that yet, though, but old man Solheim always comes and will pick a pebble walking from the Balay Calinaw and show it to us. Oh, look, it looks like a stone tool, etc. We humored him, and okay, yes. But now reading this, I realized in his old age, just like Bayer, who was not that old then, it was a habit of the old man. He was known to the students who picks things, you know, a chain cigar smoker, well, a good lecturer, you know, a slobby guy, but all around they remembered him. And this is in the latest history of UP, the chit-chatty history that just came out in 2020. And these are from the accounts of students who remembered the old professor by that time. But remember, at this time, he was at his prime. He was not even in his 40s. Now, I mentioned earlier that his intellectual mind was picked when the very popular book by a very famous American anthropologist historian, Kroeber, came out and sweepingly stated there must be no Stone Age in the Philippines. And that annoyed Bayer, who was still a young man, because he already knew that there were stone tools, except that they were in secondary context. It was given to him by the wife of Garvan and many other earlier Semper's estate, etc. And so he said, this must not be true. So he made it a career, a side interest, to gather all the information that he could. And that started in earnest. Well, immediately he responded in 1920 by saying, hey, maybe there is older, deeper history in the Philippines. We just have to look for it. And by 1922, he was seriously gathering all the literature he can to see, really, and to look for evidence of older archaeology. In 1922, he was more an ethnographer rather than an archaeologist. But then he carried on teaching. But here you will see with Goethe stating immediately when he met Bayer and he saw his collection, he was already impressed, overwhelmed by the size of it. And this is way before Bayer did his shift to archaeology. He was already creating a noticeable collection for anyone who had the privilege to be shown it. And that was, of course, Goethe. Goethe was important. This expedition, even though the only correspondent and Goethe was in Cebu and exploring the Visayas and Mindanao and at Luzon, because it gave Bayer a sense of, okay, this is a young man, PhD, young family, doing basic research. Maybe I will learn something from him, and maybe we can interact. And so the annus mirabilis for Bayer's shift to archaeology was when his friends, the contractors, Engineer Boston, told him, hey, we're making a dam in Novaliches. We're finding stuff. Why don't you come and have a look? And when he did, that was it. He never looked back. He saw several sites, stratified sites that he's been looking for, sites that had fossils, sites that had stone, what he will later call metal period, metal age pottery, Neolithic pottery, and much earlier deposits. Several locations with stratified archaeology. And the following, so he did this, he expanded his research based in the university, gathered his best students, but always part-time, and he carried on, expanded to Rizal, Pililla, to Bulacan, and then he discovered more sites, collected. By 1926, he established his Museum of and Library of Archaeology and Ethnology. Take note, archaeology is ahead of ethnology in this museum library. And it became very central to every single serious archaeologist who passed by the Philippines to go and visit and look at this collection. Until the day, actually, Bayer passed away in the eve of 1967. Now, for those who are veterans of the Katanawan project, the real veterans of the Bontoc Peninsula is not Daning Galang, but the other Galang, who Bayer said, hey, there's our reports there. Go and have a look. So Galang went, came back and said, yes, there are jar barrels there. By 1951, 50, he told these two young men, they were young back then, to go excavate San Marcelino. And we hear this story again from old man Solem said, Manuel was so good at packing things, no? Aside from eating fish without and just spitting all the bones, right? He was an amazing man. He thought that he was younger than, he was older than Manuel. Manuel was born in 1915. He was born in 1926. And he already had a family by the time they were students of Bayer after the war. And this is the very jar barrel that came from San Marcelino that Manuel wrapped in rattan and packed and managed and shipped whole and reached Manila with bones inside. And it was displayed in this museum by all accounts. I don't know where it is now. But it did survive the war. Of course, it was all after war. And so Bayer was very much impressed because aside from all of that, they started publishing the reports immediately. No? So there were immediate publications. He was impressed by the young students that he asked them later on, of course, to go and run the field school in Masbate in 1952. The two of them, he bankrolled them, etc. And then, of course, in this period of the early 1950s, late 40s, most of his major synthesis already came out finally. So the criticism was that he never really published his major works until later on. And that's a valid criticism. In fact, for many people, Bayer is known for his graphic novel with De Vera, which is like something that is a supplement in a newspaper that is widespread and read by many, many educated members of even small towns and school teachers for several generations, to the point that the thesis of this wave of migration is up to now still being taught in several of our secondary schools in the Philippines. What is not known is his other interest, which is tektites, and his contribution to tektite studies, connecting it, using it as proxy evidence for dating or associated dates for fossil layers, or at least if he never found a stratified fossil site, but he argued if you see tektites in the ground, you're looking at a surface that is associated with the megafaunal and the Paleolithic stone tools. It is, of course, something that is debatable, but the point here, he did collect a lot of tektites. That's from Bicol, this huge tektite, and he published in 2 volumes, published by the University of the Philippines Press, the results of his studies and samples of his collection. Now, unfortunately, with all of these contributions from 1914, the centrality of UP because of Otley Bayer, it is all because of Otley Bayer. So his individuality, his personality overwhelmed the entire institution, that the institution actually did not grow, unfortunately. And there are 2 very good things that we can underscore. One, throughout the beginning until 1952, the Department of Anthropology only graduated 4 masters. And out of those 4 masters, there's only one that's in archaeology. And that's Father Lynch's thesis on Neolithic stone implements. Father Lynch later on will establish research institutions in Ateneo, will be a very good mentor, but unfortunately, he passed away quite young, relatively young. Only one. Second, if we tally every single person who lectured in the history, anthropology, sociology department, and that's all of them there, from 1914 to 1954, the year Bayer retired, you only have, you only have, how do you go back? There you go. You only have Otley Bayer, Marcelo Tanco, who became a physical anthropology specialist. And by all accounts, later in his life, he became very cynical and not supportive of students, but he's the only other and became chairman in 1951. And then Arsenio Manuel, joining the department before he had his PhD at Chicago. Everyone else, as you can see, are revolving doors. You know? They were there for 1 year, 2 years. No, they never stayed and helped build the institution. This is insightful for all of us. The institution must be built, but it cannot be built by a single person, even though you're Otley Bayer. Now, by the 1950s, a new crop of people, but it's still of the same theme, argument. Robert Fox, who was at his prime in the late 50s, Evangelista Jocano, who became chairman of the Department of Anthropology, but soon enough shifted to the Asia Center and did more social or urban anthropology rather than archaeology. And then Fred Evangelista, Willie Lonquillo, and the first director of the program, Dr. Deason. But what they have all in common from the 1950s to the 1990s, they were not full-time faculty members. They were more dedicated to running and, of course, making sure that the National Museum research agenda was well-oiled and running. And, of course, Jocano, even though he eventually became part of the university full-time, was not concentrating in archaeological research. And even so, that was the case. Robert Fox was very optimistic in the late 1960s because there were women running excavations, Amirara, Amiroel, got the other one, running their own excavations at Talim Island in Tenasas, Rosa Tenasas, who's still with us, but she's a recluse and hard to interview. But so it was an optimistic view from Fox. Already getting old, not very well, but he said, okay, we're okay now. Unfortunately, all of these programs shut down by the 1970s. Archaeology was hardly in the agenda of the anthropology department. In the 1970s, it focused, of course, at the heart of authoritarian rule in trying to address more pressing issues that was happening around communities across the Philippines. And you will also see in this quote that Fox was already reflecting heavily on the legacy and on the early synthesis by, well, really the earlier generation, which was really just Otley Bayer. Now, so that's before. Then we have our 28 years. So this is where we come in. By the early 90s, people who were young in the 70s and 60s realized they were not young anymore in the 90s. And they looked back, and then no one was following them. There was no new generation. The National Museum was a dynamic division and was at the forefront, vanguard of archaeological research. But it did not have a component of teaching. It cannot formally generate trained archaeologists. It needed the university. And so key elements of the National Museum collaborated with key elements of the university to very successfully, in a year's time, formed an archaeological studies program. I'm speaking of Willie Lonquillo, Sandy Salcedo, even Jess Peralta was involved. And from the end of UP, there was Dean Consuelo Paz, Dr. Jokno, Professor Dr. Sayas. Some of them will be here on Friday, those who are still with us. And the crux of the matter was, the idea of an archaeological program was first suggested to the anthropology department. But the department said, no, 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 we're 4 fields. We don't want one field to be higher than others. But at the time, linguistics already was separated. And of course, the program, the anthropology department was concentrating cultural anthropology more than anything else. So, okay, so they didn't want it. So what happened was, the program was established as a to be part of the College of Social Science and Philosophy, led by its dean at the time, Victor Paz. But then, when it was finally institutionalized by the Board of Regents, the College of Social Science and Philosophy must formally accept the program. After 5 college council meetings, we lost the fight. So we were rejected as a program. At that time, you cannot survive as a program if you're not part of a college. Luckily, that's not, thanks to us, that's not true anymore. But the university at that time will not entertain a degree granting program that's not based in a college. That's the reason why the Film Institute is in MassCom. And that's the reason why we were trying to get into CSSP. And we then went to College of Science. College of Science was not interested. And the savior of the program was Chancellor Posadas. Because he said, at that time, he knew, he was a visionary. He wanted to create a multidisciplinary program, Technology Management Center, TMC. And you knew it would be harder for TMC to be accepted if it's by itself. So he said, okay, archaeology, you will be under the office of the Chancellor. And so we were created together with TMC, and the rest is history. But the key point here is we had actual amazing public debates with the anthropology department. Anthropology saying archaeology is anthropology or nothing. We were saying that's all very well, but archaeology is archaeology and more. And we argued and argued and argued. And I think that discussion was healthy for everyone. And I think really if we stayed in the anthropology department, it will be harder for us to be a school today, because it will be harder to justify the width and expanse of our research interests. Now, immediately with a small budget, we were earmarked the basement of the Palma Hall, and that's the program being built. No? At the start, the library was up there. There was that was the only classroom. The director's room was also a classroom, and that was it. Yeah? And this was the first batch of the Solheim Library being donated. I have to also say that if not for the donation of Professor Solheim's library, we could have also been in a much tenuous position. In those days, you were only as good as your library. And here we had a world-class Southeast Asian archaeology library given to us by a prominent scholar. So thankful was the university that the Chancellor then, Chancellor Romano, later on became president. I hope she comes this Friday for the Thanksgiving. Said, look, we're going to give you an apartment at Balay Canilao. We will pay for everything. We'll give you a 10,000 peso allowance per month, because we are a grateful university for your donation. I suppose she was thinking that Solheim was already very old, that she won't last. But he lasted. He was only 71 then. He died at the age of 90. So good for us, good for the university. So now, so some of them you will recognize, but these are the individuals I mentioned earlier: Dean Paz, Maris Jokno, Arsenio Manuel. I don't know if you guys know this guy here. She has passed away. She's not in good health. She's not in good health. Passed away. See, life is fleeting. we have to really celebrate people. This is like yesterday for us, for Mandy and myself. But looking at it, we of course look differently. But that's the launching of Hukay at the time in 1998. No? Then an early, so we always had socials at the Saw Lives every Thursday. When Saw Lives was still with his third wife, Ludi, she cooked very well, huh? And it was always a good discussion. And this is a picture that is very interesting because hopefully Mayor Belmonte will join us. She was faculty back then. Hopefully Sandy Salcedo will join us, hopefully, and Willie Roquillo. That's Bobby, who's the head of maritime archaeology now in the National Museum. That's Ichuko, who was faculty, Japanese, specializes in tradeware ceramics. Pam is faculty now at Philippine Normal University. Dangal passed away. Dangal was in charge of teaching geology at that time. That's Mandy, etc. Okay. One thing that the program did is that we were very active in giving students opportunities to do excavations. And so just look at the new batch today, right? Some of you, like Alisa, came from the field school, then went to another excavation. Some did that, right? From the field school, joined Guri, joined the Mindanao excavation, joined the Cagayan Valley excavation. The more exposure, the better for students. The faster you become honed in the discipline that you decided to join at this stage in your life. And some were very young in those days, and now is one of the best specialists in identifying tradeware ceramics and doing a PhD in pottery. And some were really very young, but, who are seriously recording Structure X where the Nauhan, right, in Nauhan, and was startled that someone took a picture of him. Now he, of course, I bet you guys don't recognize this guy. You don't know, you don't recognize. I'll give you a clue. He's into genetics. Okay. So, just a few lessons out of this general, very, very sweeping narrative. Institutions are larger than individuals, and our experience in the university demonstrates that. And I gave much emphasis on Otley Bayer, because indeed, he was larger than life. He was criticized later in his life, but nevertheless, he was larger than life. But no single person can run an institution. It has to be a community. And we must constantly reflect, because if we don't reflect, we will not remember the right lessons. And I realize that old cultures don't die, they just become recessive. And all bad cultures can become dominant again if we don't constantly reflect as a community. We must always be international as an institution. That will ensure that we will always be dynamic in many ways, not only intellectually, but socially. And we must remember that we have enough resources and capabilities to be confident to engage the rest of the world when it comes to the discipline of archaeology. And so where does it take us all? Which is all, we are all here and more listening. Well, in my periodization, we're already at the zenith of it. Maybe in a couple more decades, there will be another period. But my point is, it is not an argument for the end of history. It is more of an argument that we are, I think, more reflective than ever. And it's a natural thing now to us, because there are more of us. And I believe, and this is a belief, not convinced yet, that the reflective practice is gaining much roots. We continuously become multi-directional but directional. Our research interests are of different angles. Mandy's research interest is different from mine, from Kim, from Hermine, from Juan, and from everyone else, from Emil. We are still connected very much into an ever-widening network of communities of specialists outside the Philippines. And of course, we are at the forefront of dynamic developments in research and in field methods. It now comes to us because we are always out in the field, tweaking, improving, and research questions just keep on coming out of the minds of people who are practicing it. So this is, again, a trait of our discipline for a long time. And this is just to demonstrate that every single person in this picture published reflected on the state of Philippine archaeology as a community and as a discipline. Every single one, meaning to say from Bayer back to 2026, Robert Fox, Fred Evangelista, Solheim several times, Willie Ronquillo, Bong Dison, Mandy Miares, Sandy De Leon, that geezer there, and of course, latest publication is with, by the Ateneo Press, is the Grace's publication, a very good reflection on not UP archaeology, but Philippine archaeology. Now, our community allows many, many avenues for people to take as a career path. We always say that not everyone will want to be working in universities. Others will be in the National Museum or other museums. And others will create new programs in other universities. We are hopefully, like Robert Fox in '69, hopefully this time they last. That the Ateneo program lasts, the UST program lasts, that there will be a program in La Salle, that the San Carlos program finally starts again, and then one day maybe the Diliman program starts again. Maybe when Ana Pineda comes back, who knows? But then there's all of these things. The AIA, the Archaeological Impact Assessment, the Heritage Impact Assessment industry, we said this 20 years ago, is progressing. It's actually not progressing, it's just like in a plateau. But at least it's not dying. We have to keep it alive so that many of you will have this option. And one day, maybe some of you will make it your career. At the moment, no one is still a full-time AIA person, unfortunately. So, archaeology engaged with the science, engaged with the social science, engaged with heritage. That's the future. That's today, actually, because that is really something that we address in the School of Archaeology as we breathe and look at each other today. Thank you very much. Four meters. There's a very old picture.
Yeah, thank you, Sir Vic, for that very nice overview and sort of look back at the School of Archaeology's history. So now I think with a very packed room, we'll start taking any questions, comments, maybe even some reminiscing memories that anyone would like to share. So I'll open the floor to anyone that would like to talk.
Hi, Sarah. Well, Ara, I think that's sad if that's our long-term goal, to be #1 in Asia. But I think it's a good goal to try to achieve. And the question is, how do we achieve this? Is that the question? What we have to do is just to make sure that we maintain our dynamism and to make sure that we have a healthy community. And I think the dynamism comes from a healthy community. We all we don't all have to agree. In fact, that's bad intellectually. But we can all be in one roof, interacting when we have to, pursuing our research interests, being supported by the institution. If you haven't noticed yet, our ethos here, when you join us, is not to prove yourself, but for the institution to ask you, how can we help you? Remember that. In many institutions, it's like you're joining a fraternity or a secret society. You have to prove yourself before you're given that secret handshake. In archaeology, from the very beginning, we were really inclusive, and we are always very supportive of research, from colleagues down to new students. And I think we should have to maintain that. You know why? From that, everyone will then have their own networks, international networks, personal networks, local networks, and that networking is also very important for that dynamism. Yes, Cisco.
How can we further develop the AIA here? And because I can imagine, because we're a school now, and one point we're going to have so much students, so how can we have more open avenues on that? I mean, how can you say start other ASPs in other college? Do we just go there? Oh, you should start an ASP, something like that.
Well, there was a time I was personally naive. I thought all you have to do is tell them. I went to Ateneo, and I remember Professor Chancellor said, well, you know, you guys at UP, you can do it, right? We don't need an archaeology program in Ateneo. That was back in the early naught years. Now, Professor Chancellor is a supporter of this idea that there's always room for more programs. But to answer your question, Cisco, it's not our business anymore to be the cadres who will open up. No? But individuals who are part of our community can do that on their own, and then we will support, of course. That's what we've been doing forever. Mandy in Bulacan State with the deal. So slowly, that will take deeper roots, and that would be a program sometime in the future. And then other avenues. It has to be a multitude of approaches. And regarding the AIA, it's simple. Until no one is a full-time, dedicated AIA company with full-time, dedicated people with letters after their names, and that's their primary job, AIA will just be a plateau. Because we will always be just responding, and there will be not enough companies out there and people doing it. And by the way, the School of Archaeology has nothing to do with it. That industry is outside academia. We are an academic institution. The AIA industry is bigger, is part of the bigger archaeology community, but not the School of Archaeology. Remember that, Cisco. It just so happened that you see the same faces. But one day, that will not be true anymore. Right? One day, that will not be true.
And I guess I have a question myself, sort of similar to Cisco, along the lines of, you know, with CAPI, how do you see that sort of evolving and changing, or where would you like to see the direction heading for CAPI at least?
From the very beginning, CAPI was understood to have a very important, crucial role, especially when we were coming out of a time that we were very fractious as a community. And CAPI was the guild that could, in the future, when it matures well, be a very good institutional arbiter for perhaps personal or institutional conflicts in the future. So if you have a good and strong guild with a code of ethics that we already all know and follow, then that's already a good foundation. So CAPI is very important, indeed, very important. It must not lose its moral high ground. We almost did a couple of times in the past, but at least not anymore.
May Zoom in question.
My phone in.
Yes, hi, good afternoon.
You want to sit down? That's Grace there. That's Alison DM. That's, is that you? Yes. And that's Myra. I think that's, is that you, Jane? Or that's Taj, I think, or that's Myra. And I don't know who this is.
Who's taking the picture?
So we ordered someone to lie down in the formula at the bottom of the trench. I forgot who. That's still not digital. Ikaw ba, Mandy Kumar? Was that you who lie down at the bottom of the trench? That's not digital yet in those days.
Yeah, is it okay to comment?
Yes, hello. Can you try asking your question again?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we could hear you.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, sir. Director Paz, just wanted to say congratulations on the School of Archaeology. I did witness the beginnings in the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy, so I just want to say congratulations. It's more of just a general question. I see this very tall building in your area. Question is, when do you get to move in?
Move in. You mean in the big?
Yeah, in the new building.
That's a loaded question. That comes from the Resiliency Institute. Well, I think we will move in the moment you guys move in too. You know, we're talking of the new building.
Thank you, sir.
It's
Congratulations
anyone's
once again.
guess when we are going to take control of the first four floors of the new building. But we cannot wait because our curatorial capabilities are much affected. As you know, no? We have container vans that hold our collections, our excavation stores. It's everywhere. Our records are hard to normalize until our space is normalized. Yes, so yeah, we are as eager as the Institute of Resiliency to move in that new building.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, Didi.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Let me just check. Okay, so it does look like we're coming up on time. So I think I'm sure that if anyone has more questions, more comments, we could either talk with Survey afterwards or even at any of the other events.
Can I?
Yes.
Okay, so yes. Well, for most of you, we'll bump into each other anyway in the next couple of days and hours. But on Friday, that Thanksgiving dinner at the lobby, as you can see, we gave it a lick of paint. Everything's being clean. There are two main other things that we want to do and show all these people who helped us in the past that A, they're not forgotten, and B, that we're moving on. No, we're still moving on. One is formally now the school's library formally is now the Solheim Library, and on top of it, we are honoring the donation of Professor Salazar, who gave this table. Right, this is the table of his father. And the podium that we always use in graduation, that was a podium of Professor Wagner, but he could not bring it back to Germany, so he gave it to us. And tons and dozens of books in the library. So we have a small plaque for him in the library that we will unveil on Friday. The second one is a plaque for our friend, Danilo Galang, who passed away a couple of months ago, who also was a mainstay in that library and bequeathed parts of his library to the library. So he's a very old friend of Mandy and myself and has been part of this community for some time. And so we are also honoring him. And Ray Santiago, we named one of the rooms to Ray Santiago, who passed away. And Jonathan Cress has a small like a panel in the library to honor him. So these are things that we do, and we do very earnestly, because we want everyone to remember that we must not forget. We must not forget. So everyone is welcome. But look, we will have food, but we let first the VIPs eat. But I'm sure the food will be more than enough. Well, you will know who the VIPs are. You don't recognize them. And usually they're not young anymore. The president will be coming. He's in Bohol. We have to follow up the Chancellor. But I'm more really interested in those, the older administrators who did help us. Chancellor Cao, President Roman, Chancellor Roman, Chim Sayas, Maris Jokno, and whoever comes. Whoever comes. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, I hope I can see you all within the next coming days and or Friday as well, as we, again, continue to celebrate the School of Archaeology's birthday. And for the next Binalot talk, I don't think we've announced it just yet, but just pay attention.
History. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
that's interesting.
So hope. What? Yes. Okay. So Thursday, tomorrow's activity, board games starting at 2, 1, starting at 1, 1 to 5, and then Friday, Pinoy Henyo starts at 4, Archaeology edition, and then dinner starts at 6. So yes, I will see you all. Oh yeah, 2 p.m. moving today. That's right. Thank you for reminding me. All right. Thank you, everyone.